I recently put out a two-part series about getting paid to play the game of baseball. In that, I talked about major league players, but I didn't touch on minor leaguers. I'm going to do that today in a very short video, so come with me and I'll tell you what their life is like. Hey everybody, thanks for joining me on my channel, Brutus on Baseball. Like I said, we're going to dive into minor league baseball players today and what it's actually like to get paid to play in the minor leagues. This is a continuation of a series that I just put out in the last 2 weeks about getting paid to play Major League Baseball. And so if you haven't watched those, go check them out for sure. Toward the end of part 2 in that video series, I mentioned service time manipulation. What that means is Major League Baseball teams manipulating when they call a player up to the big leagues for the first time. If they can delay that call up a little bit and keep the guy in the minor leagues for a little bit longer, they can keep that player longer into his prime years before he becomes a free agent. The problem with that is maybe that's the best player for his position on his team. And so his team may be purposefully not bringing up the best player for that position to win, instead manipulating how long they'll be able to pay him at a lower rate into the future. The reason this makes so much sense for major league teams is because they pay their minor league players absolute peanuts. How much you get paid as a minor leaguer depends on what level in the minor leagues you're at, how long the season is, and maybe even what position you play. For the lowest level in the minor leagues, the guys that are just starting out, they might get around $5,000 for the entire season. And as you get higher, it'll get more, but the AA players get somewhere around $10,000, and the best AAA players might get around $15,000 for the season. And the minor league players don't get paid for things like spring training or fall leagues. That means that they're spending 6 months or maybe sometimes more at a job that only pays them $10,000 to $15,000 a year. These guys definitely cannot live that way, and they have to get jobs in the off season just to be able to survive. And keep in mind that these wages have actually increased substantially in the last few years, with some lawsuits that have actually been filed against Major League Baseball to bring more attention to minor league salaries. The reason why the pay is so low in the minor leagues is because the minor league baseball players are not part of the Baseball Players Association, the union that negotiates on behalf of the major league players. Without a union, there's very little leverage for the minor league players to be able to come together and negotiate with the teams, especially since they're just minor leaguers. They're not even guys that have made the major league teams and started to make an impact on that team. With the recent pressure on Major League Baseball, there's also been some changes in the housing department. Prior to 2021, very few teams, if any, provided housing for their athletes. So these guys had to actually live in large groups, sometimes 5, 8, 10 guys to a house, all living together just so they can be able to afford the rent. And the diets that these guys have is mostly fast food, junk food, just to be able to get them by on the salary that they have. These conditions are not conducive to creating the best athletes that they can. Put on top of that a lot of these baseball players are brand new immigrants, young kids, 16, 17, 18-year-olds sometimes, that have come from Dominican Republic or Venezuela or Panama. They may be new to the culture. They may not know the food very well. They may not know the language. And there's a bit of a shock there. And suddenly they have to be able to survive on a low salary with high housing costs and high food costs compared to what they're used to. And not only that, the food itself is completely different from what they're used to having. And they have to figure out how to actually maintain their health while living in a new country, that there might be a lot of culture shock going on. I don't know if it's just me, but I am not sure why the major league teams think that this method of feeding their minor league players is conducive to creating future stars to be on their major league squads. If you want to develop these kids and get them to reach their full potential, we should be providing them with conditions to be able to do that as effectively as possible. In recent years, there has been a lot of work done, a lot of which is from former minor league baseball players themselves. Garrett Brocious comes to mind, a former minor league pitcher that actually became a lawyer. And they put a lot of information out there about what it's like to be a minor league athlete. These guys play almost every day. They have extremely long bus rides that they don't get paid for. And if you put all of the time together they actually spend in spring training throughout the season and travel, their pay is way below the minimum wage requirement in the United States. And these are kids that we go out to see in minor league stadiums all the time. Now, true, some of those guys did earn bonuses if they were high draft picks, but for the majority of the minor league players, they don't get much of a signing bonus, and they have to live off of these salaries as they try year after year to break to the next level. So the next time you see a minor league player at your local stadium, you will understand just a little bit more what life is like in his shoes as he's trying to make the major leagues. Being in my position of coaching baseball, I've seen a lot of kids get drafted by the major league teams and go into the minor leagues, where they do struggle sometimes just to be able to reach the next level. And if you know any of these guys, offer to spring for a meal or maybe a bag of groceries next time. Anything that we can do to increase their chances of developing into a star player that we'd all love to see on our major league squads. Thanks again for joining me. As always, keep talking baseball, and I'll see you next time.